Before this video begins, I do want to give a very big disclaimer that the script was written before EVE 13 and was recorded and finished, actually the full video, before EVE 13 was released. I just got back home from a break. Welcome back, welcome back. Please enjoy. When it comes to many fighting series, one of the most important characters are the antagonists. Whether they be the main guy or the henchman, good antagonists are meant to challenge your characters by putting them in an environment that has genuine danger and stakes. And today, we're talking about the main antagonists of Alan Becker's Animator vs. Animation, and to see just how powerful they are in combat. Welcome to How Strong Are Alan Becker's Stick Figures, where I break down a character's fighting style and combat mentalities to see how they fight and why they fight. Today, we're talking about Rocket Corp. This is going to be part 1 of a 2-parter series because I want to encompass all of AVA's structure. Compared to AVM, EVA has a much more linear style of combat, which means that a lot of the background details are already pushed to the forefront. And usually we don't have a lot of simultaneous fights because the camera is following the characters regardless. EVA is also much shorter than AVM, especially for the screen time of the Mercenaries, which is why I combine them all into one video, because they're kind of mostly just henchmen. Disclaimer, this isn't your average power scaling style of video where I'm taking in strength in isolation, and I also won't be putting numbers for the sake of proving superiority amongst characters. It's a dissection where I'm using the scenes and the context of their personality to better understand why they fight a certain way. Also, it's not completely power that I'm after either. It's appreciating what that character can do and which aspect of their story is best reflected in their combat arsenal. So, let's begin. Before we can talk about the characters themselves, we have to talk about an elephant in the room. And that's that strength doesn't equate to the number of wins or losses. This is especially important for a series like this, where not only do I respect the character's fighting prowess in all of its totality, from potential to execution, but I also do want to critique that lens. When it comes to analyzing the strength of antagonists, it's important to consider that antagonists almost always lose in one way or another in a story like this one. Especially if you're following certain status quos like the hero's journey, the protagonist-antagonist duality, but the criterion is how difficult are they to actually beat. That's what makes them strong, especially in a fight-centric series like Alan Becker, where power plays by the fundamental rules of experience, emotion, and execution. One great example of this is King Orange. He was defeated by the means of appealing to emotion because, realistically, there was no way for him to be defeated unless AVM decided to go to the laws of the sister series and activate TSC's second power, something that hasn't been established yet in the laws of AVM. But if you were to say that King Orange is weaker, you'd be really wrong. That would be the same for Rocket Corp, and especially for the Mercenaries. I want to consider their strength regardless of the outcome of the combat. This is also because once we get into the nitty-gritty of their styles, you'll see that their defeats show a discrepancy not of strength, but of strategy and circumstance. So, let's begin. All of the Rocket Corp members have a coherent theme of multi-fighting styles. Rather than having a distinct weapon of choice like Yellow's staff or Blue's bow, all of them showcase heavy versatility and volatility. This is thematically in line with their organization being technology-centric and innovation-centric, given Rocket Corp's place as evil tech organization. Their designs are also all relatively neutral colors, with gray, black, white, and brown being their dominant color scheme. Adding red there for the Dark Lord is also a nice compliment. So let's start off with Agent. Agent is stereotypically the cool guy bodyguard archetype that has a responsibility to protect his boss both as a friend and an employee. Agent isn't cold-hearted, but he is dedicated, especially ever since the death of Mitzi. It's been shown that Agent and Victim had a close friendship, and Agent isn't just there for a paycheck. It's not even just because of pride, but because he does genuinely care for Victim that he's unquestionably loyal. First is the artist's toolbar that Victim gave him. We see that Rocket Corp has especially been researching integrating different tools to it over the years, but the first iteration that Agent uses is the rope-like lasso tool, which he uses to apprehend others. and the line tool, which he uses like a solid rod and a staff. The weight depends on the thickness of the actual weapon. The other tools we see him use are the eraser that cleans off a particular layer of existence from something, a magnifying glass that lets him see farther, a shape tool that allows him to create flat barricades or shields, and a select tool that lets him deselect a certain shape as well, and the infamous pause tool, which stops someone in their tracks if they're caught in it. It's more like a projectile, meaning had TCO decide to dodge it, he could've. Agent can also be seen using the tools to copy or reference pre-existing recorded data. Agent's use of the staff is different from King's and Green's. Shorter staves like theirs are meant to strike at both ends, but the way you hold it is based on the rotation of the body, like the arm, the wrist, or the whole body, like the waist. For Agent, however, he uses both hands, which are meant to steer the rod, meaning that both hands are always active for different reasons. One steers and the other preserves the momentum by directing the rod because it's heavier. Notice that when Agent does only use one hand, he usually either spins it, but he has to use his foot to kick the staff to spin it. Agent is also skilled in hand-to-hand combat, delivering very brutal flurry of blows that are actually a combination of punches and chops. The difference between them is that punches are concentrated bludgeons perfect for bashing someone in with pure damage, but chops to sensitive parts like the neck and stomach stop balance. Agent's entire fighting style is meant to immobilize and interrupt, making sure to break your stances with the tools rather than straight up beat you with raw strength. This is in contrast to other fighting styles like Blue and Red, for example, or even Ballista and Primal, where defeat is gained through sheer overpowering rather than bold incapacitation. Agent is brutal and swift, but he is, in his own regard, someone that's really vindictive. The duality of this best shows when he makes clean work of the Color Gang versus when he is chasing down the Chosen One. There's a lot more emotional weight to how he assisted in the Chosen One's apprehension, with Agent letting Victim let out all of his anger during the box as a rightful catalyst to years of grief. Agent also stopped the other mercenaries from dealing with the Second Coming right away, and he even goads the Chosen One into a trap before delivering the brute satisfaction of just pausing him when he's on the offensive. Agent is an adaptive fighter, adjusting quickly to how an enemy responds both psychologically and physically. In the box, we see this the best, where his speed in judging a situation is what saves Victim most of the time. But in Hacker, we see this psychologically when he's posing as yellow by making Alan hurry up with his decision. Now we move on to the Mercenaries. The Mercenaries are the standard henchmen of the big bad evil guy, and they're relatively undeveloped because, well, not every side character has the space for a fully fledged backstory. As a unit though, the three of them parallel RGB appropriately, even in the smallest of character hints, albeit in a rudimentary sense because we've spent so much time with RGB. Ballista has the younger brother vibes who's impatient if he doesn't get his way, while Primal is the one that steps up if it's just the three of them. Hazard seems to be the calmer personality-wise, but is also pretty unhinged if all things considered. So let's begin with the first of the bunch. Ballista is based off of a very old animation called Stickman vs. Thor. Oh my sweet unregistered hypercam Windows Movie Maker. Based on both of his fights in AVA and the showcase 17 years ago, Ballista is a full-on specialized combat unit. Straightforward destruction incarnate. His specialization is fast equipping. He also has expertise in all of the weapons he conjures. These include dual pistols, a hammer, a sword, sharp shards that act as AoE projectiles, and a whole rocket launcher. Ballista is also a weapon in their own right, being able to conjure an entire turret head, laser head, and rocket head alongside their other weapons. They're also able to summon smaller items like a ball chain, a bow and arrow, and homing missiles. Based on the original video, we also do have some abilities that haven't been shown yet. One is a full-on laser coming out of his mouth, which is a reference to a really old meme, I think. Full-on summoning a monster, and being a monster themselves. So it's kind of ironic that the monster-loving guy is the one fighting a genuine monster. Like, can I just say that if Ballista wants a round 2 with Red and Ballista pulls out this move, I don't think Red's coming out of this alive. How Red wins against Ballista isn't a matter of strength, but by capitalizing on Ballista's recklessness. Red, when alone, is actually a really great strategist, and he almost always takes a retreating approach if he thinks he can't handle a situation. This proves effective against Ballista, who accidentally made his own smokescreen and gave Red the opening. Also, Ballista's reference being weak against doors. Hazard's power set is a multitude of different sign variations that can alter their defensive, offensive, and even quantity. Hazard's power set allows for him to summon items, people, and elements to their disposal based on the sign that is being portrayed. When they were fighting TSC, we see that their fighting style is relatively close quarters, prioritizing getting closer despite the access to multiple ranged weapons and elements. This is also the move that made them lose against Blue, someone that was more volatile up close. Some of Hazard's feats include the following. The arrow sign creates tracking projectiles like homing missiles. The trajectory of the homing missiles change depend on the arrow type. Straight arrows go in straight lines, zigzag lines go in zigzags, arrows that only have one turn bounce around, and U-turn arrows curve like a boomerang. Some signs like the flat sign or the handstand split sign change their personal combat stance. The swimming sign also allows them to swim through water, and the no crossing sign is a reflective defense. Now, their most overpowered feat is that generally, they can summon raw materials like dirt, fire, electricity, poison, or even an entire nuclear bomb. We also know that they can summon items like bicycles, shovels, and an entire person. Now, how Blue won against them actually has something to do with them being two-dimensional. Blue hardly hesitated in anything he did during this fight, from deciding that approaching was his main strategy, to taking a tube with another human being inside. Weirdly enough, I genuinely think that Hazard was a little too passive for this kind of combat. Despite having all of the items in their arsenal, Blue somehow was able to outshock them when it came to just genuine strategy, or lack thereof. They were way too reactive to what Blue was doing instead of being proactive, which is exactly the kind of combat mentality you need to win when you have an arsenal like this. And also, with due respect, I do think that they should have won if they were given access to the nuke. I love you, Blue, but the only reason that Blue's still alive is because Victim might not want this whole place to explode. Primal's fighting style is about duplicity and contrast, a complement to Green's fighting style being both composed elegance and unbridled petty spite. Primal is strong because they're able to adapt to two different kinds of completely different movesets. Primal's first fighting style is very much more composed. They're able to make quick executions with the spear, and they're able to use long-range weapons like a bow. Though he can channel the strength of his rage, the way he takes down the Rhino is precise and collected. When they were fighting Green the first time, a lot of the attacks were actually much more compacted. It's in Primal's rage where he gets significantly faster, stronger, and larger, but his actual fighting style becomes more brutish and reckless. The entire goal of the Primal Rage is to genuinely just beat their opponent down into the ground without any kind of hesitation. The contrast to this, however, is that Green was able to capitalize on the fact that there was an environment that could be weaponized. But I think Primal has the most cons when it comes to the second fighting style. When you lose that level of strategy, especially when you're in combat with a very experienced fighter, it's those little micro movements that would definitely get you killed. And Green capitalizes on those lack of micro movements. When all of your movements are big, bold, they're very predictable. And I honestly think that Green was genuinely just a very bad matchup for Primal. It reminds me a lot of the scene from Ruby, actually. I think that Primal's first fighting style definitely needs more love and polish because they're the only one with the fighting style that's a little more composed. I definitely do think that Primal deserves a bit more of a buff compared to the others that have world-ending nukes. So yeah, I'm excited to see what Primal has in store in the future. Now that we've covered the henchmen, how about the actual masterminds pulling the strings? Stay tuned for part 2 of How Strong Are the Rocket Corp employees, featuring our beloved CEO and his new business partner.